professors that have been offered sexual favors by students or students that have offered sexual favors to professors. What happened? Not exactly being offered sexual favors for a grade, but when I was a tar in a certain small humanities department, there was this anonymous campus confession site that was a big trend with the undergrad students at our university. Lots of confessions about wanting to frick certain professors/tars. One day, a confession appeared on the page from a student who had a crush on a male tar from our department, which went into rather lurid detail about everything she or he, couldn't tell, wanted to do to him, and it mentioned the tar's gorgeous blue eyes. I suppose the student didn't think that was too identifying, but they severely underestimated how small our department was. We had 10 graduate students total, 4 of whom were tarring that semester. I was one of them, but I'm a girl, and 2 of the guys had brown eyes. The only male tar with blue eyes was mighty uncomfortable and had to go through the rest of the semester knowing that one of the students in his section was sitting in class every day having elaborate sexual fantasies about him. I taught in a university for a while. I had a student in my Spanish class who was not doing well. I had a break after the class she was in and offered to help her for a minute and guide her so she could hopefully study more effectively. We stayed in the classroom with both doors and all windows wide up. I sat down next to her to go over some material, and about 10 seconds into it, she put her hand pretty high on my inner thigh. I pulled away and told her that it was inappropriate, and I wrapped up our meeting with some instructions on what she should work on. I left and had no interest in making a big deal out of it. A couple weeks later I had a colleague approach me and say that she had heard that I had made a pass at this very same student and that I had put my hand on her thigh and that she rejected me. I got out in front of it and didn't experience any repercussions, but that was a bit scary. I never helped another student anywhere but a public place on campus, like a cafe or in a park. Lesson equals learned. Short story from someone I used to know. She was struggling in her astronomy class and went into office hours for the professor. She kept making hints and using body language to signal she was DTF, but apparently the prof just kept slowly moving the picture of his family on his desk further towards her until she left. My dad was my mom's statistics professor in college, so I guess I happened. Me and my brother constantly give her shoot for getting an easy A. Make out W a person at a dance party. 4 days later I walk into my new semester class. She was the professor. We were both a little surprised. I was the network admin at a 3,500 student university and had a girl ask me a couple of obviously leading questions about how the grading software worked, and if I had access to it I did, but changes were audited, then leaning close to whisper in my ear, being careful to drag her breast against my arm as she did so, that she would do her NYTHING I wanted if I would give her a B in a class she needed to graduate that spring. I also had an aunt offer me what she thought was the amazingly large sum of $500 if I would fabricate a complete degree for the son of some church friend of hers. The amazing thing is that 2 professors and 1 academic support staff lost their jobs trying to do the same sort of thing for students while I was there. Not a very exciting story, but here's mine. I was a lab instructor at a local college years ago. At the time, I had no control over grades, just attendance, and I could give opinions on students' work and such. No real power. Co-worker buddies and I would go out to a local club and we'd sometimes see some of our students there. I never talked to her, but she'd come around and say hi sometimes. We actually didn't have staff email addresses, so we'd give out our personal ones for students to ask questions and such. The student from the club starts emailing, mostly just asking questions about her project and such. Nothing untoward. Eventually, it starts getting a little flirty. She starts coming over and going out with us occasionally. We ended up hooking up when she had 2 weeks left in my class and like 6 weeks before graduation. We kept it pretty quiet, but people knew. We're coming up on 18 years together now. Back in high school I saw a girl I knew walking around drunk in the middle of a shopping center, so I offered her a ride home. We had a math class together, and she asked me if I thought our teacher was weird. I didn't think he was. She then told me how he lent her lunch money one day and to pay him back she tried to frick him, but he turned her down. For something as little as lunch money. It shook her that he turned her down. I then had to turn her down in exchange for the ride home. Now she probably thinks I'm weird. School excursion. 12th grade Germany. Most were around 18 by th. That one girl told us that she's about to get her grade upped by fricking the teacher who was with us and went over to his room. 5 minutes later, that teacher came knocking on our door, the room where most of us were just having a small party, drinking and smoking pot, and we all panicked. After about 10 seconds we had hidden most of the harder stuff and opened the door to see our teacher entering with a bottle of whiskey in his hand. No booze here. I thought you're having a party? After 15 minutes and about a quarter of that bottle, he left us again and told us to have an eye on that girl because she will surely not be happy with the grade he will give her, and that trying to frick him won't make it any better. It took us a long while to understand that he came over to make sure we all learn about that story and give him an alibi. Not me, but a professor friend of mine. Was older guy in late 40s teaching a business MBA class. Student in her late 30s gives him a card after exam grades were in saying she has liked him all semester and would like to go out with him. That was like 11 years ago. They have been happily married for 9 years now. My friend is an adjunct professor of psychology and very gay. He would tell me of at least 3 freshman girls a year who would offer to do anything for a better grade. He would recommend better studying habits. Not a professor, but I used to work at the math tutoring center at my college. I was a student also. I occasionally took on private tutoring jobs to make a little extra cash. Usually it was people from the tutoring center who liked me as a tutor and wanted more one-on-one time at their house or wherever. It's nice to have a tutor on call when you're struggling with homework. Anyways, this girl calls me and I agree to tutor for X amount per hour at her house. We meet up, she's gorgeous, and the tutoring goes well. I become her personal tutor for the next couple weeks and the money is good. But one day as I'm leaving, she makes a move and it leads to sex. It was awesome, and then our tutoring sessions from there on out basically ended in sex, but she stopped paying me. The dynamic had changed, and I felt awkward asking for money, but I was basically getting paid in sex. I ended up getting more tutoring gigs from private clients who wanted to bang me, and after a while it all felt like I was this math tutoring gigolo. But I wasn't getting paid, and I was wasting my time. I was an adjunct instructor at a small regional college and a female student had tried multiple times to get on my good side for a better grade. First she brought in donuts, then pizza, and finally one day she stayed late after class and suggestively asked if there were other ways she could improve her grades. Being a socially inept male, it took a little bit for that to sink in, but once I got the idea I kindly asked her to leave. She did and I thought that was that. Except it wasn't. Turns out she reported me for sexual harassment. Nothing ever came of it however, since she ended up getting into trouble, drugs I think, and dropped out of school. Even still it was a very scary moment for me and factored into my decision to leave teaching and pick a different career. I had a biased its prof who consistently gave this one attractive blonde high grades despite her average performance on exams. 2 other male classmates caught wind of this and confronted the professor. He denied any wrongdoing and even convened a class-wide meeting to address the accusation. 5 years later, he was arrested and convicted of sexual assault. He apparently groped a female student in his office. My brother is a professor at a large state school. He was propositioned so many times by students that he and the other 3 professors in their office suite agreed to arrange their office hours so that none of them would ever have to be alone with a student, female or male. Seriously. When I was 19 I was part of a performing improv troupe and we'd also run workshops for actors and improvising. One summer we did a workshop at a high school. A few of the girls decided I was cute and began a competition to see how far they could go with me. It got more and more uncomfortable and sexual assaulty until finally the girls were trying to take my belt off. It was trouble and I had to go to their principal and ask for help. Finally those 3 girls were asked to leave. There was then a huge uproar as they told their parents had been hitting on them, and when they refused to have sex with me, they were kicked out. Cops were called. Parents came to school. Lawyers were called. The 3 girls were actresses, so they were freaking convincing. They had me doubting myself and my interpretation of the events. It was so convincing. Fortunately, there were 30 other kids in that workshop who told the cops and parents the truth. It was a scary situation and I've avoided even the appearance of inappropriateness for the 29 years since th also. Frick those 3 lying little shoots. I hope they got fat. I was teaching an astronomy class in graduate school when the girlfriend of one of my roommates, both undergrads, offered to orally pleasure me for a B, and the roommate was okay with that. I passed on the offer. When I was 7, I had this principal who would bring kids into his office for minor transgressions and then yell at the back of your neck all close so you could feel his breath. It made the hairs on my neck stand up. He later turned out to be a pedophile. Nothing was offered in exchange for anything, but here is my story. Chemistry 111 freshman year. Lab tar was attractive and smart. My lab partner, being the son of 2 chemists, had a hard time grasping chemistry 111. So we spent extra time on labs than other groups. This led to more time with attractive, interesting tar, which led to me hanging out with tar more and more, which led to us dating, and now almost 20 years of marriage. I still bring up the time she gave me a 0 on lab paper for not showing my work. Also, my lab partner ended up with a career in a chemistry lab. Edit, clarification. Not to me, but to my father. He was having a meeting with a student in his lab, and his colleague was working across the room. The student was coming on hard to him, and he was doing his absent-minded professor thing and didn't really notice what she was up to. The colleague was apparently just killing himself at my dad's refusal to acknowledge/notice what was going on. The colleague proceeded to tell that story at most every faculty party, which is how I heard it. Was a tar teaching a general BA class. Girl sent me an email suggesting a hookup. I immediately forwarded it to my boss and then replied to the girl that it was against the school's academic integrity rules. Coulda gotten me kicked out of my masters if I did. College is way too expensive to get kicked out with no degree. No way in hell I was gonna risk that. I didn't see much of that student after that. I'm pretty sure she had a drug problem and dropped out. Hope she got her life together, because she was actually a nice person when we did interact in class. My advice, make sure your bosses know immediately anything like this happens. People have let it get to the your word against mine stage when allegations start flying, and with no clear evidence the college may cut you loose on the chance you did break the rules. I had an English professor that would make every class write an essay on whether or not it was morally okay for a college professor to date a student. The hot girls that said they were okay with it, he'd ask them out. Not a prof, but I dated 2 professors in grad school, stayed with the second one, moved to a new state with her, and had a child together. Joke's on me. She cheated on me with another one of her students, got pregnant and had his baby. Now I'm looking for a new place to live. Life is like a box of rotten freaking chocolate. A tar at my school sent drunk texts out to nearly all the girls in my class. It was a picture of, yep you guessed it, his dick. To everyone's surprise he wasn't reported and continues to suck at teaching to this day. Edit, for clarification, he wasn't reported to authorities so there could be an investigation. Some of the male students talked to the overseeing professor, but the tar denied everything and none of the ladies would come forward with the photos for fear or whatever other motivation. Edit, 2. I forgot a detail. He sent it as a group text, so they all knew who else got the message. Reminder that you're imagining all these people as far more attractive than they probably are. Pretty cute math prof I had my sophomore year. I did fine in the class, but on summer break she was trying to hook up. She came over one time, but smelled really bad. Like within 4 feet of her, all you smelled was a mix of feet, some weird ass perfume, and old lady smell. Did not bang. The crazy really came out after that. 10/10. Bullet dodged. Not a professor, and I told this story before, but here we go. One of the teachers in my college was forced into 6 by a student with a long massive list of transgressions. Not good grades, just 6. We were still in a dictatorship at the time and her family was very influential politically, giving her the possibility to threaten him into doing so. Teacher confirmed the rumor when the girl, drunk, decided speed dating a concrete bridge in a car on the highway was a brilliant idea. He was never bothered for it. In grad school, they paid for all my expenses in exchange for me to teach public speaking to undergrads. I was technically a tar, but I was the sole teacher in the classroom and the only one to do the grading, lecturing, etc. I was also only 1 to 4 years older than most of my students, so I was prepared for lots of inappropriate comments and suggestions. Surprisingly, though, most of my students treated me with utmost respect. Except, of course, for a few of them. When a kid didn't show to classes the first 4 weeks of the semester and had already missed drop deadline, I wrote him a final email telling him had failed and could still withdraw. The next day, I met him for the first time coming out of my office. He tried to follow me home, telling me he'd love to show me his oral presentation skills, that'd know he doesn't have to take the class once I see what this tongue can do. Instead of walking home, I walked him over to the dean's office and left him there to negotiate, telling him another tar might pick him up, but if he comes within 50 feet of me again he'd have to call security. The worst case though was this kid who was just infatuated. He started bringing me food and coffee each morning, staying after class to ask how I was doing, and dropping in for office hours 2x a week. He started messaging me on Facebook, but since my profile settings were private, I wasn't actually getting the notifications. Had been messaging me really graphic things for a month, and I didn't see them until shortly after midterms. I brought my computer into the dean and asked that he be removed from my course. He was, and the communication stopped. Strangely enough, the following semester, I had a stalker hod leave notes on my door, whisper into my open bedroom windows, and ended up breaking into my car and writing S3xual on the windshield with blood. They never caught the guy, but I always wondered if it was the same student. I'm a professor. Usually female students are flirtatious, but not overly blatant with me. But one time a female student found me on Facebook and messaged me, "I want to have your baby. Is that something you'd be interested in?" It was flattering, but I said no thank you. Not to me, but a story my high school English teacher shared about her time teaching at another high school. Some teenage boy was coming on to her, but apparently she was popular enough that when he decided to make a suggestive comment during class, the other boys in the class got up and walked him out. She never heard anything inappropriate from him again. I was a tar at a university. Stunning undergrad kept flirting with me throughout the semester. After spring semester ended and grades posted, she dropped by my office and we fricked for the next few nights until she moved to the West Coast for employment. A professor from my university walked into his office to a completely naked freshman girl standing in there with a 6-pack of beer. I don't think she was looking for a better grade or anything, was just attracted to him. He noped right the frick out of there. Edit. For the love of God, people. I don't know what kind of beer it was. A friend in high school openly told us all in the cafeteria that his goal for the year was to sleep with Mrs. P. By God he did it. She was smoking hot 10/10ths. He went back to her place after prom, and she had to resign. They dated for a few years off and on, then married with a couple kids now. Adjunct in engineering here, male, very few female students. Only once, one of them began trying to negotiate a better grade and put out escalating hints that a BJ was on the table. I just smiled, wished her a good day, and kept my boner under the table. I think people don't realize how frequently this happens. It may not be an open sexual bribe, but students make hints every semester about this type of thing. Sometimes it is about a grade, sometimes it is not. If it is not about a grade then it may go places and sometimes lasts. I actually know someone whose current marriage started out this way. If it is about a grade it is just something to laugh at. There is no way that 6 is even remotely worth a faculty member's years of school, research, and tenure. For those reading this that are thinking about trying to bribe a faculty member with 6, don't bother. Make those types of offers to their graduate students TARs. They have much less to lose. They have much less chance of getting caught. They likely have just as much ability as the prof to impact your grade. I used to do charity work where I would teach mentally handicapped people how to use computers. Browse the internet, type a letter, the works. I already knew one of our students, a woman with Down syndrome, really liked me, but once she overly cheerily informed me that she finally got a birth control implant, I started to understand in what way she liked me. But no, did not bang. My dad was a college professor, cheated on my mom with one of his students, got her pregnant, left my mom, me and my 3 brothers, 4 younger women and new daughter, left the state, had another daughter. Yeah, it was a shooty childhood. FCK that guy.